Good week tonight on the program. Hope you're being strengthened and blessed in the Lord. Tonight what we're going to try to do is share some knowledge and some true history with you that will, I think, give us all better ground to stand on. And if we know the truth about situations, we can certainly come to more logical thoughts and reasoning. And of course, that's going to help our lives significantly. It helps us get on track and it helps us stay on track. Whenever we learn the truth, it takes some of the old cobwebs out of our head that's been planted there by, well, people who wants to use you. And there's a whole bunch of them that do. We're going to look at the poor tonight. And we're going to look at those who are held in systemic poverty and offer deliverance from poverty. The deliverance to poverty and from poverty is very simple. It doesn't take a body politic. It doesn't take a whole lot of great brains to get together and fight 150 years to free those that are in poverty. One thing frees poverty. One thing unshackles us from poverty. And it's called jobs. It's just that simple. So we're going to talk about that tonight, and we're going to talk about the abuse of the poor and see how we may be able to mark the ones that's actually doing the abusing. Those who are deceitful are able to throw the rocks and hide their hands. Those sometimes who is crying the loudest about the other side are very often the ones that's actually doing the rock throwing and dealing the dirt themselves. We're going to look at some of this tonight. First of all, let's go to the book of Psalms, chapter 10, verse 2. It says, "The wicked in his pride doth persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined." So the wicked, the twisted, they actually pursue in heated fashion. They pursue the poor. They plan, they scheme, they plot how to get the poor on their side. Now understand, these are the people who never intend on delivering one from poverty. But they heatedly pursue those that's in poverty, and of course to get them locked in to what the rulers want them to do, there has to be devices, schemes. They have to give you great swelling words. They have to make you promises. They have to appear to be helping you. That's how you get the poor to run to the poor maker. This is what the Bible says. Now this word persecute in this passage of Scripture is very interesting. Look at what it says. It means burning, chase, inflame, kindle, persecute, or pursue hotly. So the burning and the chasing and the flame, all of that pertains to one thing. They hotly pursue the poor. Why would those who are not poor, why would a wealthy class or a political class so hotly pursue the poor? Well, it is because the poor will bring them money. The poor will bring them service. You can use the poor, work the poor, do it for less money, offer no money at all. Just promise them something. And they will give you servitude. That's why they are hotly pursued. In other words, it means that the chasing and the ensnaring, the bringing in, the catching and the trapping of the poor is a top priority of those that the Bible defines as wicked. So, scarcely do those who are wicked ever promise the poor anything that will truly help them. Scarcely ever do they give them jobs. They will enslave them in labor camps, but giving them active jobs whereby they are able to earn and grow. No, that does not exist. If that happens, then you lose the poor, the ones you have hotly pursued. You then lose them. If you allow them to actually work on a job that they can even start at the bottom and gradually climb their way up by staying on the job, doing a good job, putting forth the effort. A job offers you an opportunity to grow. So scarcely ever will the wicked that is in hot pursuit of the poor ever actually offer to them or give them jobs. No, what they would rather do would be to ensnare you with a device or a trap to get you in and then make it so that what they've offered you to get you in, make it so then if you earn, you lose what you've been given. That's how you can mark the wicked. Psalms 10:9 goes on with this. Speaking of the wicked, he lieth in wait secretly, as a lion in his den. He lieth in wait to catch the poor. He doth catch the poor when he draweth him in to his net. Now, this is something the Bible has marked from the beginning of time as a hot pursuit. There are entire governmental bodies, organized administrations in hot pursuit of the poor. It is not to make the poor no longer poor. If that was the case, you give them schools and you give them jobs. So we see here that the wicked hotly pursues the poor. We see that the wicked ensnares, traps, and with devices catches the poor, of course, for their own use and their own benefits. So one of the ways we know what is defined as a biblically wicked person are people that want to catch those that is in poverty and then keep them in poverty. Because there are classes of people defined biblically as wicked that wants you to stay in poverty. And it's not a new thing. It's not a 20th century thing. I just read it to you in clear terms in a book that was written concerning humanity about 3,000 years ago. If there's one constant in this universe, it is human nature. It's not hard to figure us out. Really, it's not. Let's look at what the poverty rate was in the United States in 1973. The U.S. poverty rate was 11.1%. So basically 11% of the people in America was in poverty in 1973. Now this is just a few years after Lyndon Johnson, president, the one who took the office after Kennedy was shot, LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson, started this great society, the modern welfare movement. And still, 10 years later, poverty was still at 11%. Now look at this. 12.4% of Americans now live in poverty according to the new 2022 data from the U.S. Census. All right, so now we are at 12%. So poverty has increased from 1973 till now. Poverty's increased. It's not decreased. So those who set forth this new welfare system to help you, remember the devices the Bible spoke of? Remember the traps that the Bible spoke of? It's helped nobody. What it's done is kept them in poverty. Now, who was it that set this great societal shift, this welfare system in place? It was Lyndon Baines Johnson. Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ, was a Democrat president. And you know what LBJ was recorded as saying? When he found out that the Congress passed the welfare bill, LBJ told two men on Air Force One, it was recorded, "This will keep the N-word voting Democrat for the next 200 years. Oh, you see the device? You see the trap? You see the intentions? Spoke immediately the moment that it was verified that the Congress had passed it. It was designed and set up to make blacks vote for Democrats by putting them in systemic poverty, giving them welfare, not letting them earn their way out of it without losing what they had, causing black women to divorce their husbands, destroy the black family, as has been done. It is the reason why almost 70%, 76% of black children are raised in a single-parent home. It is because you are married to a government. Government is daddy. Government is husband. Government is provider. And it is a snare. It is a trap. It is a trick worked by evil, wicked souls. No more needs to be said than what the man who designed it himself, a Democrat president, said that it would in fact keep the N-word voting Democrat for 200 years. It's the reason they did it. And it's worked very well. Let's take a look at these stats again. What is the poverty rate in the United States? 12.4%, more than it was in '73. Of Americans now live in poverty according to a 2022 data from the U.S. Census, an increase from 7.4 in 2021. So poverty actually went down and was down to 7.4 in 2020, 2019. Oh, do you remember who was the president in 2020, 2019, 2018? Do you remember who was president? Do you remember what that racist Donald Trump did? He had the greatest number of blacks employed in the history of the United States of America. Had the greatest number of Latinos employed in the history of the United States. Do you know why poverty took a nosedive down to 7.4 in the years of Donald Trump? Because he provided jobs, not traps. And the poverty rate dropped to 7.4. In 2022, the census, this is 1 year of the Democrats back in office. And now the poverty rate is higher than it was when Lyndon Baines Johnson promised to free everybody with welfare, of which does not work. This same government posts signs in their national parks that says, "Please do not feed the animals. It causes them to become dependent on humans." That's what's in all the public parks owned on federal land. You don't feed the animals because it makes them dependent. You think the same government does not know what feeding people does? It makes them dependent. What destroys poverty are jobs. The racist Donald Trump gave the black community, the Latino community, the greatest number of jobs in the history of the United States of America. Now let's spend just a few minutes on some history pertaining to slavery, the bad days. Let's look at this 3/5 human clause, something that Jesse Jackson has become very wealthy offering misinformation on, something that Al Sharpton has become very wealthy on, screaming about and hollering about that, you know. In the United States Constitution, blacks was deemed to be only 3/5 human. You've probably heard that before. The problem is it's all a lie. So let's spend just a minute to get some truth concerning it. The free northern states during the Civil War days, the free northern states wanted to free men from slavery. The Democrat South wanted to hold them into slavery and do it forever. So the people in the North concocted a scheme. What we have to do, they said, is we have to stop the Democrats in the South from being able to count the blacks in their census. Because, see, the more people you have in an area, the more representatives you get to send to Washington. Well, the more representatives that you get to send to Washington, the more power you have in Washington. The Democrats already controlled everything. So the northern states said, we don't want you to be able to count blacks. Why? Because they would not let blacks vote. They wanted to have the representation of the blacks, the number of the blacks, the slaves. They wanted them all counted so they could go to Washington in large numbers. But they had no intentions in representing the blacks that would get them into Washington. So the northern states said, and had to compromise, okay, we will only count 3/5 of them. And the Democrats agreed finally. It wasn't saying that blacks was 3/5 of a human. It was saying only 3/5 could be counted in a census because you are using them to exercise power that we will never be able to vote out or break, while at the same time you're not even allowing the people that you're forcing us to count, that's giving you power, you won't even allow them to vote. So see, the 3/5 clause was actually the first step moving to free the slaves.
The free states of the North wanted to abolish it. The slave states of the South wanted to expand it. You might say that the southern slave states wanted to have it both ways. They wanted to count their slaves for the purpose of representation, but they didn't want to give any representation to their slaves. Why did this matter? Let's look at the numbers.
Point number one, just as I've said, they wanted to count the number of slaves so that they could have more representatives in government. But they did not want to represent the slaves, nor even allow the slaves that put them in office and gave them power, did not even want to allow them to vote. Here's the numbers.
In the 1790 census, just 3 years after the Constitution was ratified, the free states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware had a population of about 1.8 million free whites. The slave states of Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia had about 1.1 million free whites and 633,000 slaves. Add those two numbers and you get nearly equal populations between the North and the South.
Okay, so even though the North was larger than the South was fewer, smaller, they were able to keep the same number of voting or census by counting the black slaves. But again, let me push the point. They wanted to count the black slaves, all of them, but they did not want to represent them. And they did not want, nor would they allow them to vote.
By the time of the Civil War, the slave population had grown to 4 million. Imagine how much more powerful slave states would have been without the 3/5 compromise. If 100% of the slave population had been counted, slavery may very well have lasted into the 20th century.
And in fact, may very well even exist to this hour, because there would have been no way to ever get the Democrats out of power. This is what their move has been from the beginning to this hour. It is all about votes. It has nothing to do with nothing else. The vote is their power. So the number had done reached 4 million. Well, the North never would have stood a chance to even hope to be voted into office or take control. So guess what? Slavery continues and continues and continues because there is no way to stop it. So they requested that only 3/5 be counted. Not that the black was only 3/5 human. That's a Jesse Jackson lie. That's an Al Sharpton lie, that has enriched them while you stayed in poverty.
The 3/5 compromise didn't deny the humanity of blacks, it affirmed it. I'm Carol Swain for Prager University.
So we should all be stronger by this clear and obvious truth that's been presented. Now also, did you realize that there was more than a dozen black congressmen in the 1870s? Things might not have been exactly the way they have been presented. Now, we clearly understand, ain't no man got the right to own another man. Ain't no man got the right to stop another man from earning and gaining. No way, shape, form, or fashion. But if things was exactly as we're told, how was there a dozen black congressmen in the United States in the Civil War days? Did you ever even know about that? This is one, Hiram Rhodes Revels. He was a United States congressman in 1870. How did he climb the mountain if it couldn't be climbed? During the 1870s, more than a dozen African American men, many of whom had been born into slavery, were elected to the U.S. Congress. That's strange news, isn't it? That in the Civil War days, there were dozens of blacks, a dozen blacks, elected to the Congress. Who were they elected by? Not by blacks, because blacks didn't have the right to vote. Did you know that there are nearly 2 million black millionaires right now in the United States? More than 2 million. Well, see, if they climbed the mountain, you can climb the mountain. If a dozen blacks during the Civil War days of slavery could be elected into the Congress of the United States, if Ben Carson could become the greatest neurosurgeon probably in the world, performing brain surgery on a baby inside its mother's womb that came from poverty to that place, and finally a cabinet in President Trump's administration. From poverty. You know how Dr. Carson got where he got? It wasn't by LBJ's food stamps. It was by something called a job, hard work, and determination to climb a mountain. Maybe there was some crying room in the past, but it ain't today. If you ain't climbing the mountain, it's your fault.
Say there's work for you to do. So I took my master's hand and joined the Christian band. Now I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. I left my home and kindred, bound for the promised land. With the grace of God upon me and my Bible in my hand. Distant lands I've trod, crying, sinner, come to God. Yeah, I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Yeah, I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Oh, yes, I am. Yeah, I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. I promised him that I'd serve him till I die. Now I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. I'll need